G'day, I'm Brett O'Donnell and this is my Datsun 1200. Come on, mate.
Hey man,
How's it going?
it's good. Oh, I love the old cars, they're so much cooler than the new ones.
I tell you, it's quite interesting. I took my kids to school in it last week,
Yes.
and my daughter was in the back. She goes, "Dad, I can't put my window down," and she'd never seen a winder to wind the window down. She was looking for the button.
Cool.
She was looking for the button, mate. And I tell you, it's next level to
72?
1972.
Yep.
It's a few non-original parts in it. The upholstery never came out blue.
Okay.
So that was all changed.
Yes.
Seats are actually out of a Mazda 323.
Oh, like a hatch?
Yeah, like an old hatchback.
They actually, yeah, now that you mention it,
they probably feel...
my brain just did the...
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're good seats.
Oh, look, they're okay.
Oh, for what we need, you know, it's a road car.
Oh, look, I totally agree. And this is the thing, is it's basic, you know, it's so easy to drive, so easy to fix. Getting parts for it's just a nightmare though.
Yep.
That's the only downside. But
Well, it's kind of old now, man.
that's the problem, man. I mean, used to be, I remember when I was a lot younger, we used to go to the wreckers, you know, the pick apart.
Yes.
We used to take in a toolbox.
Yep.
And your mates. The wreckers used to be full of them.
Yep.
Right, you could, whatever you wanted, you could grab it now.
No.
You're sitting there waiting on trade meet for 6 months to get what you need.
And you'd be like me with the Starlet, you're always looking, you know what you may need, and if one comes up you grab it.
Well, and even if you don't need it, you're like, oh, I might need another steering wheel one day. I should probably get that steering wheel because...
I'm the same. I like this. Is that original? The rev counter?
Yeah, so the rev counters came out, particularly these old dashboards, where there was actually no room for a rev counter.
Yes.
They made room for it in the center console. It's not ideal. The later models actually came out with the 3 gauges on them.
Yes.
One of the gauges was actually a rev counter that you could actually see.
Sure.
But you can imagine rallying one of these, you're sideways around a corner, the last thing you're going to do is look down and have a look to see what sort of revs you're doing. It's more token than anything else, I think.
Well, I argue that they're a good indicator, and if you know that at that noise it's doing 6 grand, you don't need to look at it ever again, because your brain knows that's the 6 grand noise.
I totally agree with you. And that's the good thing about them, is that because they're so simple, you know when you need to change gear.
Yep.
You know, just naturally. Look, I've had Datsuns my entire life. Like my first ever car was an old Datsun 120Y station wagon.
Yes. Oh, wagon. I love wagons. Wagons are so much cooler than anything else.
We had the speakers from an old Iowa stereo sitting in the back. Of course. And tuned up to the radio. Yep. And used to cruise around the streets of Hastings and Napier.
Oh, so you're a North Island boy as well? Yeah.
And then sort of went out of them, right? You sort of, you put all that behind you, you grow up, you move on. Yep. And then you sort of get to an age and you're like, oh, I remember feeling really cool in one of those, and I kind of want that feeling again. And then you jump on trade and you're like, shit, that car that I bought for $450 when I was 18 years old, that's now worth $10,000. And that's the tough bit, man. Yeah.
But then you buy them and you do this, and you remember.
I totally agree. So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When you're out, cruising around in your Starlet, how many people stop and go, "Hey man, cool car," or "Hey, I used to have one of those"?
Everywhere you stop and everywhere you go.
It's incredible, right?
It's so neat.
It is, and it's nice to have other people appreciate what you appreciate. I think that's really cool about it.
And they all have a story.
Well, everybody's owned a Starlet, a Datsun, a Mazda. Someone's got a story. Oh, my mate used to have one of those. Oh, I dated a girl and I took her to the movies in one of those. My mum and dad had one of those. Everyone has a story about it. And it's quite difficult. Like every weekend I take this out and I might cruise down to Mitre 10 and pick up some supplies. I'll park it in the car park and invariably someone comes up and goes, "Cool car," right? And then they tell you their story.
I like just rolling around town in it. People at the lights, you get the oh, your wing mirrors are the same as my ones.
What, non-existent?
Yeah,
exactly. Turn yourself around and we're good to go.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that feels really good.
It's not bad.
That's awesome. litre?
1.5 litre.
And it's an old single cam?
Yeah, single, so that's cam work was done by Kelfords here in Christchurch.
Yes.
So it's got a mild cam, 40mm Delautos, twin Delautos. They were tuned by the guys at Rocky Auto.
Okay.
And I tell you, they just, if you've ever tried to tune a Delauto car, they are, it's black magic. They've got 4 screws on each one, and you've got to stand on one foot, close one eye, and then turn the screwdriver half a turn. If you screw it up, then that's it. That's absolutely. And so anyway, that's the one bit that I get the experts to do. And the guys at Rocky are bloody really good at it. That's what I liked about that Gumboot Rally, right? So you went on so many different roads. You weren't just sticking to the highways. There were options to go on the gravel and parts of the country that actually most of those guys on that rally had never been to.
No, that's
and the conversations I had with those guys, I've never been to Reefton before. It's like, cool, what a great excuse to go to.
Absolutely. And turning up en masse with a bunch of labelled up cars is always a bit more exciting.
And it is good. And the locals love it as well. Like they really, they get in behind it, they love it.
I really like the power delivery in this. It feels incredible. So, why a Datsun 1200?
Bloody good question, actually. I think most people want to buy a car that sort of reminds them of their childhood, right? So, my first car was a 120Y, and I always wanted a rotary, and my mates always had rotaries, and I remember Dad saying that you're not allowed one. You'll kill yourself in it, son. So anyway, I ended up with a 120Y, which I hated initially, and then it sort of started growing on me, right? And then I think I sold it for $400. You get to a point in your life, and it's like, I love a Datsun again. Reminds you of those years, hooning around Hastings and doing skids when you probably shouldn't have been doing skids, and that's the reason why I ended up with another Datsun. And so I've been looking around for quite some time, and something popped up on Trade Me, and I thought, I've just got to do it. So I phoned the guy straight away. I said, look, here's a deposit. He had done a lot of the work.
And it was this one?
This one here in particular. And look, he had done probably 75% of the work, and a lot of the stuff that I wasn't good at, right? So he was a panel beater, right? So the paint job was just immaculate. It was just perfect. I'm a bit more mechanical, so I get in there and say, well, it's got a 1200 in there. Let's put a 1500 in there. It's got a 4-speed. Let's go a 5-speed. Let's upgrade the diff. Let's throw a few more nice things at it just to make it a bit more enjoyable. And I think Datsuns, particularly the old 1200s, everybody knew someone who had a Datsun. It was their mum or their dad or their mate or their cousin. They probably owned one as well. And it's one of those vehicles that it's not going to break any speed records. But it brings back a lot of nostalgia and a lot of memories for a lot of people. There was so many of them around, and growing up, and you're very similar age to me, sort of early 40s. Growing up, we were surrounded by them, right?
Absolutely.
And they were $400 to buy. And you could buy one, and you could throw it around an orchard or a paddock, and you could pick your girlfriend up and take her to the movies, and they were enjoyable cars.
And you could park them everywhere because it was just a car.
Oh, and the other things, they're about half the width of a standard car these days, right?
True, yes. So you can get 2 in the garage instead of 1.
Correct.
The 1500cc engine, the twin carbs, and the 5-speed out of the Sunny. What else have you done that's not factory in it?
The seats are Mazda 323 seats. Very difficult to find the Tombstone seats out of an original SSS.
Yes.
Almost impossible, in fact. We've settled for slightly second best. They look the same. Although, funny story, I parked outside Repco a couple of months ago, and I was in there just grabbing a new battery for the car, and this old guy comes up, would have been in his 60s. He goes, I used to sell these. He goes, SSS. And he looks at me and he goes, they're not SSS seats.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, geez, how did you know? And he's like, I've sold so many of these vehicles. I raced them, I rallied them. I've owned about a dozen of them. And he goes, they look so close. And he said, most people wouldn't pick them. I was like, oh man, I tell you what. And so I shook his hand and I said, like, that's amazing. And this guy just, he just knew everything. And I spent the next 20 minutes chatting to him about all of the modifications and bits and pieces. But a genuine SSS, few and far between now. And most of them sitting in garages and hiding away from the public. So
it's the SSS, not the SS. Sorry, I thought they were a
Triple S with it, SSS. Datsun 12 and SSS there. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, there was quite a few of them built here, but most of them ended up on the scrap heap, unfortunately.
So it was a New Zealand assembled car?
The Triple S's are, yeah, that's exactly right. So they came out of the factory, the Datsun factory, and then they got shipped up to, I think it was Tauranga, and they got about 10 modifications made to them, from 60 horsepower, 70 horsepower cars to 100 horsepower cars, and gave put a smile on a few people's faces. So it's great.
100 horsepower, which we assume this is. It was absolutely perfect for me.
That's all you need.
It is all you need. It felt good. It felt really good, and it would have been lots of fun on a long trip. It would have just been lovely.
Oh yeah, I tell you what, and that Gumboot Rally we did, all the way over to the west coast, when it first came out, and hey, let's go to Hamner. I was like, oh yeah, this thing will get to Hamner. That's all fine. And then the first 15 minutes, I'm like, Hamner's that way. Why are we going to the west coast? And
we went the Gumboot Rally way.
We did. We absolutely did. We took the long way, the scenic route, and I tell you what, never missed a beat the whole way. So it was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, what a great experience. It's still good fun. It's just finding parts for it. That's the big challenging. But I'm looking for a handbrake at the moment, and you think you just go down to the local wreckers like what we used to do back in the old days, right? Used to sort of,
as in the physical handbrake.
The actual handbrake and the cable and everything else, all the assembly, and you think, oh god, surely I could find. And look, you could probably find something off a more recent car, but something a little bit more original. Very difficult to find. So yeah, just simple things like that where you think actually, if it was 20 years ago, there'd be 100 of them.
And especially being an old Datsun, assumably like Toyotas, which I know, the parts are almost the same anyway. So you could probably get a Datsun 120Y one, and it'll probably be the same or close enough. That you
very similar. Yeah, that's a good point actually. Yeah. So, but no, they're good fun. I enjoy them anyway.
And what's your favourite mod on it?
Quite an interesting story actually. I went to went to go and get a muffler for it, right? So got the headers on there, got the dual auto side drafts, and it sounded great, but it just had the original muffler, which I think is probably a 1 1/4 inch or something like that. It's just it's tiny. And I took it into muffler shop just down the road here in Hornby, and the bloke came straight out. He goes, "Oh, I love your car. I used to have one of these." And they're just they make people tell you stories, right? And it's fantastic to listen. And this guy's telling me all about it. And I said, he said, "What do you need?" And I said, "It still sounds like a 1200. I want it to sound, something special, and the guy said, leave it with me. I know exactly what you need. And it just sounds epic. It sounds really good.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, I could have gone to a shop and said, can you just weld me up some pipe? But this guy had an appreciation for the vehicle. He knew what I wanted, and he goes, look, just leave it with me. Trust me. I know exactly what you need. And he smashed it. He nailed it.
Those are the guys.
Really stoked. Yeah. And he was super stoked. He said, look, I haven't even started up. I said, you started up, and I started up. You've nailed it, mate.
Wasn't this car, what would be here?
The Mazda RX-3 that I wasn't allowed to own.
Yep.
That's what it would be.
So they're still the pinnacle?
I think so, and it's only because I've never owned one.
Yep.
And I wanted to own one as a 16-year-old. I think that's,
It's the untouched fruit.
That is, yeah. And but hey, who knows? Something might pop up.
19-year-old you. Mm-hmm. Has his Datsun.
Yep. What's
your advice to him?
Oh wow, shoulda, woulda, coulda, mate. Absolutely. I think I bought my first Datsun for $300, and I sold it for $500. And I thought
almost doubled your money.
And you know what? I gave myself a high five after that, and I was like, yeah, you beauty, you've made $200. I think I blew it all that night at the pub. Yep. It was gone that quickly. I think cars that have sort of stood the test of time, and they sort of have that inherent value, a lot more value now than what they did back then. Would you have kept it? Oh, geez, these things rust so quickly, right? You stick it in your dad's shed for 20 years, and you come back 20 years later, it's a pile of rust, right? They've got to be looked after. They've got to be driven. They've got to be appreciated. Very difficult to do, right? And as a 19-year-old, you want to go to university, you want to go overseas, you want to go and do something, you want to go and get married, and you think, oh, so that bloody car in the shed, a bit of money would be good right now. But 19-year-old me, find a good one and keep it. But you've still got to spend a bit of time and effort looking after it.
What's the plan with the car?
Oh, mate, it's one of those vehicles that if I was to sell it, it would have you know, it's probably got 400 hours of my time on it, right?
Yep.
And I think it's definitely a keeper, but it's just slowly starting to run out of garage space. You know, we've got the second 1200 race car in there, so look, it comes out every weekend, which is great. So it gets driven, it gets appreciated.
Well, thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
I really enjoyed driving your car, like
awesome.
Way more than I thought I would. It was here for me, but I don't know, man. I really enjoyed that. It was a really cool feeling.
No, good stuff.
It's got just the right feeling, just the right power to me. Yeah. It just felt good.
It's so good. No, I appreciate that, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.